Hello and welcome to The Right Stuff. I'm Veronique Mandal. I'm so excited for you to meet the guest authors on this segment of The Right Stuff. My first guest will take us into a very bizarre and compelling world of characters who can scare you out of your wits. And my second guest writes children's books that give Mary Poppins and Agatha Christie a run for their money. So let's get right to it. Schlabaum has worked as a private investigator, co-owned an independent bookstore, reviewed books for CBC Radio, and written books and plays, and just lots of things. Welcome to The Right Stuff.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We've got so much to talk about, and I can't wait to get to your books. But tell us a bit about you. Where are you from? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in southwestern Ontario in a small farming community of 1,000 people. My father was a Baptist minister, and because he stayed at one church for the whole time, I grew up in this town from age 3 up until 19. So I find when I'm writing books that a small town, there's always a small town aspect to the books because you sort of write what you know, and that's where how I reveal myself or from my memories. I put them into books.
So people. Where you're from want to hear the name of their town. So where was it?
It's a little town called West Lorne. It's halfway between London and Chatham, and it's actually been the basis of 2 books that I've written. But after high school, I went to Mohawk College in Hamilton. I worked for a television broadcasting program. I worked in the television industry for several years at CHCH, as well as other production companies in Toronto, and then I made a change in my career, and I started working as a private investigator.
Great. Well, we're going to get to all of that a little bit later on, but I want to know, when did you become a writer? Is that something you did right from being a schoolboy?
Not really. It was more of a gradual thing. I was always a very big reader in our household. You always, you read for a half hour every night. That was before the internet, before, Netflix, before everything, and that was sort of one of our chores, is grab any book you want, but go in a quiet corner or wherever in your bedroom and just read for a half hour. So I always liked reading stories and the creativity behind it. And I think probably when I was about 16 or 17, I started getting into reading a lot of Agatha Christie books and also the Twilight Zone. For whatever reason, I maybe just came on, syndicated shows came on, and I would watch those little half-hour gems and be fascinated that in this 30-minute period, an entire story could be put together until the end where your jaw sort of drops because there's some kind of little twist ending or there's a little message that comes out. So I think it was about that time, 16 or 17, from the Twilight Zone and watching Benny Hill, you sort of saw the creativity side that you can you can put
a jump.
Well, you have the humor on one side and you have sort of thinking stories on the other. But so when I went to college, it was more, I would work for any projects for school. I would be the one who would be the writer or the director, where I would let other people be the cameraman and the lighting director and that. So that's really where my creativity came from. I was just more interested in those aspects, and that sort of carried on once I decided, hey, I should write a book. Maybe I'll write a book, see if I can do it.
And did you just sit down and write it?
Yeah, more or less. Like, it was just one of those. I was working on a television show that went on hiatus in probably like April or May, and it didn't come back till September. And I'm like, this summer, I gotta see if I can write a book about, a small town and a drifter who comes into a small town and causes havoc,
So this is when Lasting Impressions started.
Correct.
All those years ago.
It started 25 years ago. It was, between 1990 and 1992, I started writing this novel. And again, at the time, I was reading a lot of this. So this is the late 80s, early 90s. I just started reading a lot of the classic Stephen King books, and he was very obviously popular at the time. But I also found an author named Clive Barker, who writes sort of paranormal fiction where somebody could be sitting in the real world here, but then walk through that wall and he's in a completely different dimension. And I really hadn't read those type of books, and I still haven't. I never got into reading fantasy books, or I don't really read science fiction. But for some reason, his combination of this world and that world and colliding really opened my eyes to what you could do as a writer. And that's sort of the genesis of lasting impressions.
I'm going to talk about that copy in a minute, but I'm beginning to understand now where these characters came from. It is compelling. I couldn't put it down, and I was half afraid to start reading the next chapter because this bizarre guy, Dale Hawkes,
yeah.
Where did he come from? Did you model him on somebody?
I really didn't. I was just thinking, if this strange drifter with, Dale is a 20-year-old drifter with a very dark past, but when he comes into Lasting, which is, again, small community, everybody loves this guy because he's new and he's interesting and he listens to your problems and he tries to help you out and he befriends everybody in town. But what they don't see is behind his eyes, he has a very dark past. He has a very bad childhood, and from the age 10 until now, he's sort of been on his own. He's been fighting for his life, and he's also, I think this is where the Clive Barker part sort of comes in, where he sort of becomes a mystical creature or person almost, because he's able to manipulate people in a way that we probably in conversations we're not thinking of manipulating this person's thoughts, but he has he's sort of put together all these interactions that he's had with people to make them see his way or to change their thinking in some way that they weren't even thinking possible.
Yeah, the first time that happened, I thought, whoa, where did that come from? And it set the book off on a whole new sort of side.
Right.
And it was so interesting. And then, of course, he's got other characters in him.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you find out that really, he almost has like a split personality where, from beatings that he had from his father and then a bad, at an orphanage type of thing. There was like 2 periods where he really should have died because of evil around him, but a guardian angel, named Gaelic, comes to him and says, I can help you out, just believe in me. And through the story, you don't really know if Gaelic is his guardian angel or if he's the devil. And I think that's another aspect that people like this guy, but, and it seems to be he's working on behalf of the people of Lasting, saying, we got to dial this back. Like, he wants to see the end of this very evil, bad Dale that's sort of grown up and bring him back to where he was, the childlike existence that he wasn't able to experience.
Because you can't help but feel really sorry for Dale, even though, you want him to be caught and you want him to stop doing all these bad things. But then your heart keeps going back to all these awful things that happened to him.
Right. I think with him, he really is a product of, one's upbringing. And that could be in any of the, Jeremy Atkins, who is one of the main characters that interacts with Dale. Yeah. Again, his character is, a sort of a spoiled rich kid. His dad is the mayor. His mom is the principal of the high school. And he just has this aura about him, which, is fine. And in small towns and anywhere, he sort of had the golden girl and the golden boy, and he's an athlete and he's really smart. And, people, I think, even in Lasting, will put their dreams, onto him. It's like, wow, that Jeremy, like, he's going to go places, and, we were all part of it.
Yeah, and I love the parallel that you did with Jeremy and his father. sort of getting nearer to the end of the book and similar things happening to them, and it changes their relationship.
It does, and that's the nice thing about, well, when you're creating any kind of books, and when I write mysteries, you find out that a lot of the things that are happening in the first chapters, by the end, that's when everything sort of intersects. And the funny thing about this book was this was my first attempt at writing a novel. And in subsequent years, I've written 4 other full-length mysteries, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But when I started going back to re-edit this just 2 years ago, because I figured I want to get this story out, but I want to bring it up to the standards that I now have at from writing these other books.
And so just sort of get that book out because that's where it all started, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is where it all started. This was self-publishing in 1990, or actually 1992. What I end up doing is doing the cover and getting it bound. All dot matrix. And at the back of the book was a questionnaire. So the marketing standpoint that I had was to go to the Oakville Library system. They put it in their system for 3 months. People filled out a questionnaire to help me out, good or bad. So then 25 years later, I was able to, bring the story out and, bring it up to my own high standards that I've had since I started writing mysteries.
And it certainly is a high standard of suspense. And there's so many, just when you think you've got it all figured out, there's a turn. And
right.
So it's really quite a wonderful read.
Thank you.
So now, before I interrupted you, you were going to talk about some of the things that you've done in your life. You were a private eye.
Well, I still sort of do it on a part-time basis, but what that's helped me with is I started writing mystery novels about 7 or 8 years ago, and one of my characters is Steve Cassidy. He's my ex-cop, now sort of flawed private investigator. For some of your viewers, you would get this, like to me, he's sort of an updated Jim Rockford from the Jim Rockford, the Rockford Files TV shows. James Garner and that. So he's very low tech, but he looks into missing persons or cold case files, which are cases that I've never really investigated in my real life. So what I end up doing is I always think, if my boss were to give me this file, what would I do first? Who would I talk to? Where would I go? What questions? And it just gives authenticity to the investigator. And again, I'm writing what I know in a specific way, in sort of my own voice, and I've had great success with those. So.
That's terrific. I know that you've owned a bookstore, but we need to know what's next, because I need to know, are you doing another one of those?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm doing another Lasting Impressions. The next book I've just started to write is a sequel to my other mystery series, Jennifer Malone, a Jennifer Malone mystery. First book with her was A Memorable Murder. She's sort of my rip from the headlines type of investigator. So that will hopefully be out early 2017 or late 2016. So.
You'll have to come back.
Okay, I will.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, to find John's books, you can check out his website, go to Indigo and Amazon, and of course, you can keep up with him on his blog. When we come back, a conversation with talented children's writer Margaret MacMaster. Don't go away.